Chip Kelly, to some extent, was surrounded by turds. And he was headed towards Turdville. And so he's now at Ohio State.
To be fair, he kind of created the turds at UCLA by refusing to recruit and quiet quitting.
Just giving up on his job.
Still think that that's one of the strangest stories that didn't get covered.
I agree.
Where he just refused to recruit and said, I'm not going to do anything, fire me. And when they wouldn't because they didn't have the money, then he quit and took a job as a coordinator at Ohio State and then pretended like he just didn't want to be a head coach anymore. Okay.
Well, I mean, what do you want him to do? You want him to write a big expose about that? Like, we all know what happened.
It's just weird that no one will.
He's not going to admit it.
No one will acknowledge it.
I mean, to be honest with you, I think the way he handled his job is more part and parcel with how people handle their jobs all around the country.
It's true.
You know?
Yeah.
But
quiet quitting
so
is a
shocking.
thing. We just don't see it as a coach.
It's just shocking when it's big-time head coaches because we
Yeah.
just think, oh, my God, how would you not love to be the head coach? You want to be the coach at UCLA?
No.
I don't blame the guy.
I don't think Deshaun Foster wants to be the coach. He's like, fine.
Totally.
Okay, I guess.
So they did ask Chip about coming back to Eugene for this game this weekend.
I didn't build the program. Rich Brooks and Mike Bellotti built the program. I just kind of jumped in after Mike, but it's a special place, and I think it's great for our players. You know, a chance for them to play in one of the special places in college football. You know, they came out here a couple years ago and got to play in the shoe. We get to go play in Autzen Stadium, and it's Autzen Stadium at that time of day. It's truly special. So I think our guys are excited. They're a really good team. You know, and I think that'll get your attention right away when you look at the film. And then I have, family there. I have a brother-in-law and sister-in-law and 3 nephews, so I'll get a chance to see them. And then some of the coaches that I've coached with, Nick Eliotti, John Neal, Don Pelham, Steve Graywood, a couple guys we've text messaged. So besides family and those coaches that I worked with, that I'll get a chance to see very quickly, it's about the game. And I'm fired up for our players because it is a really special place to play.
Yeah, you mentioned that time of night at Autzen.
Yeah.
Which is true. It's supposed to be a nice night.
Yeah.
So the sunset will be.
Yeah, it's a great environment for college football. I mean, the Horseshoe is great. Autzen Stadium is great. I mean, we only have. I'm trying to think, like west of the Mississippi. I think we only have 2 great venues for college football. BYU has a really cool stadium, but it's. You got to play bigger games than what BYU's played over the years. Rice-Eccles is okay. The Rose Bowl is only cool when it's actually the Rose Bowl. The Coliseum in LA isn't. I really think the only 2 truly great must-see venues west of the Mississippi are at Husky Stadium and Autzen Stadium. And I think at a big game, those are as good as most places in the country. So yeah, I do think it's cool, and I would hope that I know when Oregon gets ready to go play out at Ohio State, that's viewed as, oh my God, we're getting to play in the shoe. And I wonder what if Ohio State has that, like if they're fired up, like yeah, we're going to get to go play at Autzen, or if they're going to try to poo-poo it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure they won't poo-poo it, but maybe internally they're like, whatever, we play in the shoe.
Yeah,
like why would we care about Autzen?
Well, be careful. That is a really tough place to go play and win.
I mean, I don't think it gets much tougher than when you're Ohio State and you have to play at the Big House.
Yeah.
I mean,
sure.
That's like Autzen on steroids.
Yeah.
But at the same time, yeah. I mean, maybe they come out here and are like, wow, this place is way better than I thought, or way tougher than we thought.
I do think that playing. I never played at Autzen. Played at Husky Stadium back when it was old Husky Stadium and it was rocking. Played it at Florida State. Played it at Bama and Notre Dame. And played in some really hostile environments and been to plenty of games at Autzen. And I do think that a lot of times talking to different guys that have played, the West Coast stuff can sneak up on you. Like you hear the stuff, but I think until you've been in a big game environment in Seattle or down in Eugene, I do think that sneaks up, and I'll be surprised if Ohio State doesn't figure out pretty early on that this is not just, oh well, maybe you see the 60,000 and you're like, well, that's not the Big House. Be careful underestimating that environment.
Well, Michigan just went up to Seattle and
yeah, they found out that place was rocking.
Yeah, it was. Here is, do you want to hear Dan Lanning?
Yeah, what do we got?
Our friend Dan Lanning. He is talking here about Chip Kelly's Ohio State offense.
Well, I think he's always done a great job of utilizing his personnel, moving guys around and allowing them to do things that they do really, really well. He always finds unique ways to run the ball. I think that's, one thing that he probably doesn't get enough credit for is his ability to run the ball, regardless of situation. And he's at UCLA last year. They were number one rushing team in our conference, for a lot of reasons. And it's because of his ability to run the ball. But he does a great job utilizing personnel, keeping on your toes, changing the tempos, creating unique formations that you've never seen on film before. So you always have to prepare for something you haven't, really prepared for.
Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of the beauty of having Chip not having to be a head coach is he just gets to sit back there and create some things. And I promise you, much like a lot of teams do, and Dan Laney talked about this against Michigan State.
Isn't Will Stein doing the same thing?
Yeah, they're doing the same stuff.
That's how you got it. You have to do that.
Yes, and with Ohio State, they really haven't had to show much. And we talked to Dan Laney like when the Michigan State game's in hand, you kind of hold some stuff back, and I'm sure both sides. But especially Ohio State because they really haven't been tested. They haven't played a close game yet. I'm sure Chip's got a couple different wrinkles. Maybe situational football, red zone stuff, fourth down, goal line. He'll have some wrinkles for Oregon that they haven't seen before, but ultimately that's not going to decide a game like this. This game is going to be decided, up front. And I still think that's by far the biggest matchup in this game is the one weak link that we've seen from Oregon and Ohio State. If you had to look at the entirety of the 10 games that those two teams have played, right? I think both 5-0. The only unit that really has had like a glaring stretch is the Oregon offensive line, and it's been stabilized. They don't do the rotation anymore. Feel like that's been solidified, and it's played a lot better over obviously the last couple weeks. But it asks the question: is everything fixed, or was it you played some really bad fronts? Michigan State's a bad football team. Oregon State athletically can't compete with Oregon, so that is my biggest question going into this: are the woes of the offensive line fixed? Or does Ohio State, which really does have an elite defensive line, does that come back to show some of those cracks? Because if Oregon is one-dimensional and Dylan Gabriel has to go back in obvious passing situations, it's going to be problematic. That will be a death sentence for Oregon. They cannot be. This just is as good as their receivers are. This is not a team that is meant to throw on 3rd and long. And when you've seen them get bogged down this year with their offense, it's exactly that. 3rd and 6+. This is not a true drop back team, especially against that Ohio State defense. So they have to stay on time. They have to stay ahead of the sticks. And that comes down to, can that offensive line consistently get the push and get the run game? Because remember when they went out to Ohio State a couple years ago, what did they do? That was CJ Verdell and those guys. They just beat the brakes off of them and ran it down their throat. They've got to come out and establish the run. And then let Gabriel work off that.
Well, he was mentioning Ohio State's run game and Chip running the ball. Ohio State is...
They're averaging like 7 yards a carry.
They're averaging 6.3 yards per attempt. That is 5th in college football.
But their top back is 8 yards a carry, and their second back is 7.8 yards a carry.
Yeah, they're just
Anderson and Judkins.
It's just so hard to I'm going to ask Bartu this when he comes on. I don't really know what to make of the stats because the schedules are so uneven.
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, Ohio State is a very good rushing team. They're the second in points per game in all of college football behind Boise State. So obviously, they're very good. But what stats can you look at if you've played such a easy schedule and a uneven schedule?
Yeah,
it's just like I don't know.
And you
I don't know what to look at.
They have a common opponent in Michigan State, and it's about the same score. It was just a dominant. It was a dominant ass beating them. Yeah. We know this. Michigan State is not anywhere in the same class as Ohio State and Oregon. And outside of that, that's why I said if you wanted to give an advantage, I think Oregon playing at home, obviously a big advantage. But Ohio State hasn't struggled at all. Oregon has. Now, it was early, and so you would like to think that those are finished, but the other elite back and the only other elite offense that they played was Boise State. And Boise State gave them fits. Genty, now Genty had a couple of the big runs, and so maybe that skews the numbers, but he still had them, even though they did a decent job of bottling him up. And I know he's the best back in the country. Ohio State's a better running game than Boise State. And so as much as I love this Oregon D line, and I think this Oregon D line has been fantastic. I think that's, if I had to pick one thing that scares me, on that side of the ball, it would be that. It's the one real good rushing attack that you face. I mean, they put up 34 points against you, and you needed some some special teams help, and by some, I mean a lot of it, to beat Boise State. So, though that's another little angle if you want some anxiety, if you will,
Well,
if you're an Oregon fan.